right?
Yeah.
Relations Board. I know that we are not at quorum yet. I got a text from Kiona. Her meeting just ran over. She's gonna join us about 4:10 virtually. Dina did say she was going to be here. I'm not sure about the other emails. I was trying to track.
I thought I saw a couple that were gonna be here on video.
Yeah, so we'll see if they join us. I don't see them yet.
Shannon said he might be late.
Who was that? I'm sorry.
Shannon might be late.
Oh, okay. He doesn't get to count towards our quorum though.
Oh, that's right.
Why don't we go around and just do a quick round of introductions while we're waiting for some other folks to show up? I'm Kathy Zenda Wilson. I'm happy to chair this board and happy.
Can
to
you just say where you're reporting from, Kathy? That way I can do it as attendance.
Oh, sure. I
That'd be
am
great.
reporting in person from City Hall in Battle Creek.
Hi, Paushan, aka Don Woodward, in person, Battle Creek. Happy to be here.
Pastor Joe Hooper in person here in Battle Creek.
Hi, Josita Todd, in person, Battle Creek.
Commissioner Ballard in person in Battle Creek.
Chuck Asher in person, Battle Creek.
Rebecca Flurry in person, City Hall, Battle Creek.
Kimberly Holly, staff.
Wonderful. I did see someone sign in on their iPhone, but I'm not certain who it is. So if it's one of our members, could you let us know where you're reporting from and who you are?
No, it's Chief Bagley, and I'm sorry, but my laptop is malfunctioning, and I had to sign in with my iPhone. So
That's
I'm here.
okay. Happy to have you, Chief.
Okay, so we are not at quorum, but we're going to get, which is.
How many do we have? Do you have 15 members?
8 here, 9.
And are you counted as one? So that gets us to 7.
We have one more.
One more. And Dina, I know that Keona is gonna be here in 10 minutes and Dina is usually here.
Here we go.
Oh, hello. How are you? We just completed introductions. If you'd like to introduce yourself right now and just say that you're reporting in person from Battle Creek.
Let me get my breath.
Yeah. Just put us at quorum, so we're all a little excited.
Hi, my name is Eva Masters. And I moved to Battle Creek a couple of years ago from Holland and Zealand area. And I'm originally from Spain. So I'm very excited to be here and I will take the elevator.
Next time, yes.
And you are reporting here live in City Hall in Battle Creek, just for the record. Yep. Okay, thank you very much. So our last meeting was February 21st. You all received the minutes. If they've been reviewed, I will take a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any comments or questions? All right, all in favor to approve, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Okay, the minutes for 21st have been approved. Thank you so much. Any communication, Alicia?
CSC.
There were none.
Okay, committee reports?
Like it starts in.
There are none.
And ends.
Old
there's
business?
still- No.
There is none.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Right, then we'll get into new business. We really wanted to set the stage with today's meeting, really like helping all of us, those of us who've been here a minute and those of us who are new to the committee or to the board, celebrate what we've accomplished. Because I know it feels like we've been treading water a little bit the last few meetings. It feels like we're trying to be rudderless almost. What are we trying to do? And so we've had a couple conversations, staff and myself and Vice Chair Ackley, to really discuss what, oh, here comes Derek too. I'm just trying to keep my eye on this. I'm not trying to be rude. I want to be the people join us. Hello, Derek. Thanks
Hello,
for joining.
everyone.
Hi,
Derek
Derek.
Schmidt remotely from Battle Creek.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Derek. We're just getting started right now. And we're talking at the point, we've approved minutes and we're talking about celebrating the successes we've had so far. So if there's anything you want to share, just raise your hand and some of us will be keeping an eye on the screen so that we can tell and call on you. So welcome. So I joined back when I was still commissioner, I think. So it's been a minute. I think it was 2021 or 2022, maybe even 2020 when I was appointed.
2021.
Thank you. I love when people are really quick with details. And our main charge at the time was really centered on the Citizens Review Board. There was a lot of work going on out in the community around that. And part of the reason that, that there was so much energy around that was because the Human Relations Board really got into a position to try and figure out how can we make this something that's going to be beneficial, effective, and powerful for the community. So we spent a lot of time working on our own research, meeting with community. We held community listening sessions. There was just a lot that went into that. So to get it ready to go in front of the commission. We're going to hear later some updates from Kimberly and most likely Rebecca about things that happened last night at the commission meeting, and maybe you too, Commissioner Ballard, based on your perspective. But I really think that's worth celebrating, all the work that went into that. It was, I know that at a time we felt like we were singularly focused, but it was a big task. And I think everyone on the board really took it seriously. It gave us some purpose and some drive for sure. But during that, we also, you know, successfully got the pride flag risen in front of the city hall for the first time ever. We didn't do that alone. The commission really had a big part in that, but the Human Relations Board, I believe, made the recommendation around that. So hoping Dina was gonna be here by now to really speak to that personally, because I know that from the Pride Center, there was a lot of emotion, and I was there in person when it happened, and it was a very moving experience. I know there was a lot of pride, no pun intended, in the process of doing that. So, you know, there are things that we've accomplished. We've learned more about the code enforcement aspects of things. I know that was a spot that folks on the committee had heard a lot in their neighborhoods around. I don't understand how they operate. I need to know more about like why they are where they are and when they're there and what their approach is. And I think we, you know, we're able to learn some of that so that we could be ambassadors for the city and understand a little bit more what's going on with that. But I am curious, for those of you who've been around for a little while, are there other things? And Pastor Hooper, I think you get the prize for the longest standing member. Other things that we want to lift up that the Human Relations Board has accomplished.
Well, we had Andy, and he talked a lot about the project that we had with the housing.
Mhm.
Of course, when that was a real biggie because of the effect that it had on the community. But then some of the little things that we learned for ourselves was like the police department and fire department, the procedures and things that they were doing, and that gave us a better vision on how we could work with the community. So I think it was all overall really good effort that we put in to help bridge that gap, and I think that was our main focus, to try to be a connector between the city and the community. And then you know, doing a lot with the neighborhood planning councils as well, bringing those in, making presentations, things like that. So I give us an A+.
Well, you know, after reflecting on like the last meeting and some conversations I've had with some of you as well as with city staff, it's like reminding ourselves that we're an advisory board. We are composed of a lot of very passionate people who are action oriented. And that makes it hard to remember like what role this board plays specifically. And so just reminding ourselves and reminding myself, like that is the role of this group. All day long, I facilitate action. And so to come back and say, okay, well, our position really is to advise. We advise the community based on what we hear from the city. We advise the commission when it's appropriate and when it's needed. We can even advise certain departments of the city, which is why we shared the 2-year plan with you. As we were talking, we thought it might be helpful because the city it's so multidimensional. There's so many different elements of it that it's hard to always appreciate everything that's going on at once, right? And so when I asked Rebecca, and we've talked to Kimberly about in what role is advice needed? If we're advisory in nature, where is it most needed? We don't want it to be one directional, that it's only the city telling us what they need advice from us about, right? We're out there listening, we're in community. We also want to be able to bring those things forward. But I thought the 2-year plan, and Rebecca made this recommendation, is a good place for us to actually look at what are those things that are And I'm gonna, if I botch this, let me know, Rebecca. It is what the city is held accountable to, right? It's what drives what you're doing. It is how you create the action based on each department or each function of the city. And you'll know through the commission as well as the residents, specifically what's going on. I don't know how many residents go into a document like that and go, now I know what the city's gonna do. But maybe you have now, because we've shared it with you. And so I'd like to hop down to number 3 in this agenda item and go back to the scheduling in a minute. And Rebecca, is there anything else you'd add? Or Kimberly about the, I don't have my glasses, something else?
No. I just wondered if you want us to put that up on the screen, because it was part of the packet.
Yeah.
But
So small.
I'll give you, it is. Well, and it's gonna be small on the screen for sure.
I know I had to zoom on my computer.
I know.
to read it.
So whatever's helpful to the committee. So just a little bit of history.
Yeah.
But first of all, I want to say in the celebration work of the Human Relations Board, Kathy's leadership has been tremendous. It's always difficult to come into a board as a new commissioner and serve in that kind of leadership capacity. So I needed to celebrate her leadership because, she was instrumental in making sure we talk through kind of honestly and in collaboration around the Citizens Review Board, a very difficult topic that had been talked about for years before we actually got it to this point. And so let me just say thank you for your leadership of the HRB, and you even agreed to stay, even that you're not a city commissioner anymore. And we don't see that very often. It's hard to serve on some of our boards and commissions because you have regular jobs every day. We want to respect that, but also the fact that, I think she lifted up the importance of this board's voice. You are advisory to all of the things that she mentioned, first and foremost to the commission, because, they want to get a diverse voice into things before they're asked to officially approve things. Even things that took years to get to last night. And I'll let Kimberly talk about the commission meeting last night as well as Commissioner Ballard. So thank you. I think a celebration of the HRB includes your leadership. Appreciate that. Okay, so 2-year work plan. The little disclaimer is that what you have has not been officially approved by the city commission yet. As you can see, that is a ton of work. It takes staff. We go into, right before or right after the first of the year, we go into a retreat mode and we look at last year's 2-year plan. And then we create the proposal of the next 2-year work plan. This is only our second time of having a 2-year work plan. It was created under the commission that Kathy served on. And she is correct. Everything that we do ties back to this plan. It ties back to, we call them community results. You probably know it as a strategic plan, but what you're looking at is basically the city's strategic plan for the next 2 years. We will be presenting this to the commission in either May or June. We're still working through that. Because and why I'm going to involve the city manager evaluation committee is they're the committee of the commission that's tasked to make sure that gets done, make sure that the city manager is held accountable, that we're making progress to those things in the 2-year work plan. And I'm required to report on that on a regular basis. The reason it became a 2-year plan is the commission decided it was a lot for staff and administration to have to do it every year. Because as you can see, there are many projects in there that we're not even going to get done in 2 years. But we don't want to lose it kind of on our radar as a staff, because this is what the commission tells us are our priorities, and it's our responsibility to move the needle on those. So it's what they use to evaluate my performance as a city manager, which now happens every 2 years. So just a little background of how we got there. So when you look at the document, and I think I brought it up on mine too. Go ahead.
I'm gonna pause for a second just to welcome Kiona.
Okay.
Hello, Kiona. Thank you for joining us. If you could just let us know where you're reporting from so that Alicia can get you in the notes as it.
Yes, hello, joining virtually from Battle Creek, Michigan.
Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
we're looking at the 2-year plan now, Keon. I think you probably caught up because you've been
Yep,
here.
I did, and I'm
All
there.
right,
Thank you.
Thank you. So when I talk about this is our strategic plan, what you see these are our real, we call them the priority-based budgeting community results. It is the overarching themes that basically at the time it was created that the city commission, staff, and community said, these are the most important things to us. So when I'm just going to use the very first page, so that where it says result 1, economy, that is a community result. How we have defined economy in Battle Creek is set by the commission and staff and community. And right at the time Kathy was coming on as a commissioner, it was time for us to do a 5-year check. We had been doing priority-based budgeting for 5 years. It was time for us to take a look at, one, do the community results still make sense for Battle Creek? I'll tell you historically, those probably don't change. They're broad enough that those seem to resonate year after year after year. But how we get to or measuring success, that has changed some, obviously. So just to kind of walk you through it, the community result is economy. But then the theme and the concept under economy, I'm just going to use the first one, is business-friendly city policies and services to encourage growth. So that can be defined many different ways, but the commission, staff, and community says that the result definition is to create a business-friendly environment that encourages business and economic growth. And then the work plan item are those specific activities that will happen, and then what constitutes success. So you've got the plan item, work plan item, and then the metric. So we shared with you the document that the commission has showing all of the 22-23 2-year work plan items, and then what's being proposed for 24-25. So we celebrate when we can put completed in that work plan item. And we celebrate those. There are ones that you will note that we did not complete, nor did we bring it forward in the 24-25 year, either per direction of the commission or because of staff resources or capacity. It is just not advancing in 24 and 25. So that's why I said this still has to be formally approved by the commission. And so that's just a little snapshot of how we use this. So when the commission goes to approve it, the 2022-23 will go away and you will just see the 24-25. Just for your edification for those data geeks, I think there's 162 work plan items. We added 51 and we removed 51. So it remained 162 work plan items. Were you going to ask a question, sir?
Just, no,
Okay.
I was thinking that's a failure. You should have had 52 you took off.
Right. Well, we're a full service city that is in motion 24/7 and it changes. And what I think the other thing I would like to lift up is this doesn't include kind of the routine, regular things that we do. These are more of the larger initiatives that, police officers are going to respond to calls. There is not a work plan item in there that says police officers are going to respond to calls. But there are things in there that says the cops officers will create these relationships and they will work in these geographic areas. You know what I mean? So we get into those larger concepts and umbrella things that move what we feel, it moves our economy forward or whatever result we're talking about. We can show that it is aligned. We take it one step further too with the city's budget in that this is how we allocate resources. If our programs do not meet one of these community results and or definitions, it doesn't happen. It doesn't get resourced because this is kind of our North Star. We're always coming back to those community results to be sure that the work we're doing aligns with them because that is what our elected body has tasked us to do. So it sounds complicated, but actually it's been a huge help to staff because you can imagine we have nearly 600 employees at the city, all doing great things. But we couldn't possibly capture all of that. However, they know where they fit in by looking at this. Our residents who call in to say, what do you mean you're chip sealing my road? This is why we're doing it and this is where you can find it. And we're happy to answer those types of questions. So it just helps us all align, maybe Commissioner Ballard, has other things to add. And again, this has not been approved by the commission yet, but Ted and I have met individually with each commissioner and we are ready to bring it forward. I imagine that's going to happen in a 1-hour workshop prior to the commission meeting because we've been talking about this for quite a while and we would love to get this in place before our next fiscal year. So I would anticipate it coming some round in June, but I hope I didn't, if you wanted to add anything, Commissioner.
No,
Okay.
you're doing a great job.
So when we were talking about, kind of where the HRB could go, again, I want to, exactly what you said, this is not for the city to dictate. We're just providing information for the board to consider as what they may want to talk about, learn more about, focus on those types of things. And so we were talking about, well, why don't we share the 2-year plan with the HRB and see, what that might look like. You may say, yeah, I don't really see anything that we should focus on. Okay. I mean, this is really just up to the board with how they want to address it. But please know that this will be out on our website. As soon as it'll be part of the agenda packet when it comes sometime, like I said, in May or June. And then it will become official. And then on a quarterly basis, staff has to prepare a report to the city manager evaluation committee showing what we have done in response to these things. It's a lot. So to do it quarterly, you can see how many pages this document is, but we report on every item. Sometimes it's just still ongoing, and that's okay. Sometimes the commission says, hey, I think this needs to be a little bit elevated in priority because this is what I'm hearing in my ward or in the city. And we certainly can move and adjust. And we had some really good commissioner questions about, well, can we add to this? You could, but once it becomes a document approved by the commission, it would take another commission action to add something or subtract something because we are accountable to our elected body. And so, it's possible, but it would take a couple of steps.
So that's like an example of that would be like when the ARPA funding isn't really reflected in here, but that was something that we ended up having to take on as a commission. That's a once in a lifetime experience that we have. Those of us who had that probably have a little less hair and we had to go through that.
Oh, we're still going through it.
I know, I'm not, but yes, I do. I appreciate that it's still active, but yes, those kind of things come up, right? So you have
Yes.
to figure out, they still have to align,
Mhm.
even if they're not explicitly named. So I'm curious, for those of you who had a chance to take a look at this, were there things that bubbled up for you, that you thought this might be something that we as an advisory board either want to learn more about, want to pay attention to, think that we have a role in supporting? Yes, Chuck.
Your explanation made this so much more clear for me.
Okay.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
But
You're welcome.
the 3 areas I see that I would like to know more about, number one, it's just started today, is the fire station issue. And a lot of that is just the fire department's business, but those stations, people have traction to them. So that could be something that we could become involved in some way. The other one is the exciting news that we're adding a lot of affordable housing in Battle Creek. And that's a little bit related to the fire stations too, especially at number 2, because there's going to be a lot of affordable housing that's going to be added right around that station. So I think that's going to, your decision on a new station here is going to be based on that probably, if you decide to do that. And then the other area is the transportation area. That's a high priority for me, is transportation.
Thank you, Chuck. Anyone else have any priorities as we reviewed it?
I did want to expand a little bit on what you had said in regards to the flag. You mentioned the LGBT flag, which to me is secondary to a lot of the flags that have come up, because the Pan American flag was proudly presented the Silver Stars mothers last night, coming up in June, I believe. And the Gold Star mothers that we had last year, as well as not Right for Life, but Give Life in organ donation, which is very nice to see that up there. And I know a lot of people misunderstand about a flag, but I can tell you, when you're part of a community that flag flies for, it really makes you feel like the community is involved with you. And I know we get a lot of complaints on one of the flags, but it's mainly because unless you're part of a community, you don't understand. And we can't make you understand. And so I'm just thankful for the other 4 flags that have been flown this year. And I hope that there's more to be flown next year.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, because the one that was brought to us that kind of sparked this idea of changing the flag policy was when we were talking about the pride flag. But what we did as a commission was say, no, any flag that gets proposed that meets a set of criteria, so not any flag, right? It can't espouse hate. I think there's some conditions that we stated. And that was a huge win for the city, because I think visibility and belonging are really critically important to just us as humans, right? So when you feel seen, there is a sense of belonging that comes along with that makes you feel part of the community. Otherwise, you could be walking around with people all day long and never feel like you're a part of it. And that,
Exactly.
yeah, right?
When we happened to spend 3 weeks out in Palm Springs. And so the first thing we drove into is a flag flying there welcoming us. Is like, oh my gosh, this is so nice to see and not have to fight for it, because here it feels like you're always fighting somebody's objection to it. So I'm just thankful for that. I think we also need to get out to the community and to some of our commissioners that we've already revised the flag policy. We have some people voicing opinions as far as we need to revise our flag policy. We just did.
Last year.
Somebody's either not getting the message or they're not wanting to hear the message, one of the two. So I just wanted to push that out there and reiterate that I'm thankful for these other flags that are flying.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And that the flag, the impact it has not just on the city hall, but as an example, I manage the Facebook page for Rotary. And I'm trying to get content all the time, but I've started doing commemorative posts, and I got an LGBTQ plus now. Plus is the new addition to that. Post that it's going to be is it 1st of June, I think. I've got it on my calendar. Asian Pacific Islander post. And that kind of idea was born out of the discussions that the commissions had and these commemorative things. So I think there may be some impact that we don't even know about.
Yeah.
That is being caused by that.
Exactly.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I was just going to ask him, because I think that's a great point. There's a lot of people in the community that do not know the policies change or being reviewed. That particular thing about the flex, I think, is very inclusive, right? And a lot of people could take advantage of feeling great about the community that is opening the doors to more people and to show them, right? So the same thing that he's doing with the social media for the Rotary, are we doing something like that for the Battle Creek social media? Because I feel that a picture of the flex and explaining the policy was reviewed, and now we have additional new, and we are hoping for next year to have more. I think it's a great way to include the community and to say, hey, look, we are advances, we are celebrating you, right? And I don't know, just.
Yeah, Ava, thank you for that. And I know that we've got an incredible communications team here at the city. And I'm wondering, is that something that we could lift up to Jessica if it's not being done? I don't follow it close enough to know if there's been, like, when a new flag goes up, does something go out on social media saying, we revised our flag policy, and now what you'll see when you drive by is this, and this is what it means.
We have done that most
Okay.
recently at the time that we amended the original flag policy. Am I missing anything?
Oh, Whitney's joined us. Hello, Whitney. Sorry, thank you for keeping.
I thought you were, no, and I thought she was telling me something. I'm like,
Just let Elisa know where you're reporting from. We'll give her a second. All right, yes.
I just I just jumped on too, y'all. Sorry, I was late.
Yep.
Oh, Jeff's here too.
Yeah.
Oh, there he
Yeah.
is. Hi, Jeff. Could you please tell us where you're reporting from?
Battle Creek. I'm reporting from Battle Creek.
Okay, nice to see you. Hi,
right,
Whitney.
good to
I
see you
that
guys.
just see that you just unmuted. Whitney, can you
Good
let us know?
afternoon,
Hi, go on.
good afternoon, everybody. Whitney Wardell, remote from Battle Creek.
Thank you so much. We are just talking about the 2-year plan, lifting up things in there that we think the Human Relations Board may want to prioritize or learn more about, or actually position ourselves to do something about as it relates to advising. So you were sharing, Senator.
yeah, I think the last time we did a broad messaging approach was when we revised the flag policy. And I know that when we do, Jessica does a podcast of a kind of a breakdown of the commission agenda. So when it is on there, then she includes that in her podcast. And then most of the time the mayor includes that in his mayor's report.
Okay.
So that's kind of how we
Yeah.
work
And
that
I
right
heard
now.
That
Mhm.
it's just, if you are not into it, listening to all
Yeah.
of that,
Yeah.
it can get lost, a
Yeah.
little bit. And that's why a picture is always so much like visual.
Well, and the benefit of social media is that people share those.
Yeah.
Right? It's a little harder to share. You can share the podcast and ask people to listen. You could share those other things, but it's easy to just hit share on a post on social media. Were you gonna say something else, Rebecca?
No, I think the only thing I was gonna say is not always is that looked upon as a good thing. It's this very close and fine line that we have as a governmental entity. That's why I think it took us a while to get to the first flag policy. Because when you talk about who is actually approving a different flag to be flown, that was kind of the crux of the discussion. And, I think people misunderstand that there's a whole application process to fly a flag. There is not. Our flag policy indicates that it has to be a reflection of the commission as a body and their speech. Because, for example, there were some communities in the Grand Rapids area, no policy, just started flying flags, or they would put messages on their digital board. What happened was, without a policy or some parameters around why and how that happened, they had no choice but then to also consider flying flags that would be highly offensive to people, because you can't pick and choose on a governmental whole, to be honest with you, unless you already have something in place that says how the elected body chooses to utilize the flagpoles, because they can become a very difficult discussion. And I know, because before that, we had many different flags flying on poles that the city had at parks and things like that. And it was frustrating to say, okay, we cannot fly the African flag anymore at Claude Evans because we have this policy now. And the commission has to say it is their voice to fly the flag, and only these poles can fly it. All the other poles must simply stick with the state, the US flag, the state flag, and the city flag. Because again, it becomes an expression of speech, and we never want to violate a freedom of speech, or, so it is very complex.
Yeah.
It seems like it shouldn't be, and we could talk about that all the time. But when you have to then get lawyers involved, and when you're challenged on it, you have to make it so that it's defensible in a court of law, which, we have received challenges to our flag policy. And so far, they haven't gone anywhere, because we like to think it's because we had the attorney research to put in place what we had. And it was after others that had already been challenged and won, and there's case law saying. So not to say that could change. We live in a very, complex world.
Welcome, Dina.
Hi, Dina.
It's like I walked into something. And I'm sorry.
That's okay, but if you could just let Alicia know that you're reporting in person.
Yeah. Hi, Alicia, Dina Spencer in person here in Battle Creek.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we are reviewing the two-year plan, talking about some of the accomplishments of the HRB, and one that came up was the flag policy. And thank you for providing us some context around the complexity of that, because from the outside, it could seem rather simple. And that there's just somebody making these decisions on their own and we don't know. But I do wonder, and this is something we could probably discuss later, but as you're talking, it could be something that we want to take on, is that we work with the groups. If the city can let us know what groups have asked to put their flags on the pole, work with them on what they want to do to share their information. And it doesn't have to come from the city, right? Like, could we work with the organ donation group and say, you know, we're really excited that you approached us about this. Is there anything we could do to support you in communicating that and sharing how proud you are of Battle Creek for doing this? That could be something that we consider, because they may not think of it, but what I'm thinking about is like, Chuck, you do that for the Rotary, right? You're finding those things to share. There could be a role that we play there. What else on the two-year plan? If anybody else had any thoughts about what stood out, I had a few, but I want to wait until I hear from everyone else.
I'm sure you all memorized it.
I can barely read it.
It'll be a
I had to read it on my computer.
I had to put it on a sheet
If
like
you-
this.
If you think that this is gonna be the basis for our making some decisions on moving forward, I think it would be good to go through each one of the 7 items, the economy, the safety, the governance, you know, let's go through it in detail.
Well, I don't know that we're making any decisions so much as I'm really grateful that Rebecca was here to give us some context for it. We all have it digitally now, which I found it a lot easier to read on my computer screen because I could zoom in. And so I don't, we're not gonna walk away with any definitive things that we're going to do with it. We just really wanted to provide context and say, this is a way for us to be identifying things that we might advise the city on. Like, for instance, one thing that stood out to me was that there was a bringing explicit racial and ethnic lens to planning under development. That to me is something that feels like it would be really relevant to this group. Like, how is that being done? I want to know more about what the development team is doing specifically to do something like that, because that takes some intentionality. Is it particular folks? And I don't expect answers right now, but that's one that really stood out to me as something I would want to know more about. I didn't write if it was on either.
No, that's it.
Oh, so it's not me. It's our brains. Our brains are moving it right now. It's trying to find it.
Okay. I'm like,
Um,
wow, that's good.
And I don't remember exactly where it was. That one
Here, I
stood
can
out
get
to
it.
me.
That's gotta be in like.
And Kimberly, this
design.
one you should be able to speak to, because it was around DEI and that there were policies that were utilizing equity lens. I believe that given the integration with the DEI work and this commission, that's something that we are well positioned to do. So that as you are reviewing policies and there's something that you want perspective on from the community, that could come to us and we could provide you some feedback. Does that seem like how you could envision this going?
Absolutely, certainly. Certainly from an internal standpoint, I hope we go in department by department,
Right.
probably starting with human resources. Actually, we've already started down that path. But for example, something that's more community facing would be an economic inclusion policy or some type of document that indicates our practices around making sure that we are being inclusive
Like vendor selection?
in
that kind of thing.
decision making. Absolutely. So
Yeah,
is that along the lines that we're,
for sure.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, because I think us positioning ourselves to be there for, in support and in service of those things that the city wants to do. So that we in each of our positions can be listening if that's what we need to do, getting perspectives of others, like we did with the CRB when we asked to do the listening sessions, right? Not everything will elevate to that point of needing a listening session for everything. But I think that we've each been chosen for this board because we represent communities out within the broader community. The other two that stood out to me, and then we can go to others that they have, was the NPC restructuring there's a lot there, and anybody who's been around a minute, neighborhood planning council, have gone through a metamorphosis, and then they kind of really scaled back, and then there was, the ones that I went to for a while when I was at the community foundation, I was hopping around to those each month. And you'd have the same three people talking the entire time, and it didn't feel very collaborative. Neighborhood planning councils. Yeah, and so I know that there's been a lot of talk, and when Chris Lucier was part of this group still, he talked a lot about the need for us to be thinking differently about what is that structure and what's the most effective use of an engagement strategy so that the city has a way to get information out into the neighborhoods, but the neighborhoods have a way to communicate to the city what they need. And so there's a lot that can be learned and unpacked from that one. And then the last one that I had was around this one that I didn't even know existed, this Helping Hand Scholarship. Is that something that is getting moving forward now that you oriented us to it? I'm not sure that are you able to search?
We found the one you were talking about.
Okay,
Kimberly and I were just talking about,
Oh.
does that seem it's in the right place? But anyway, it's under arts and culture,
yeah,
under diversity.
yes.
We'll have to check that out. It doesn't seem like the right space, but again, we've looked at this document so much, I'd have to go back to the notes to say, okay, that's where that came from, this department and et cetera. So got that one. Now you just said the Helping Hands. Let me just go to that one.
And I think they found it.
Eric's really good.
Yes, so it's under connected community.
Yeah, there-
parks and- Yeah, under recreation. Thank you.
You got it, Eric?
Yep.
There it is. Okay. Okay, so
But it looks like they're gonna be updating to a new goal. Like, is that a place that there's a need for some input or,
I think it's been so successful. I think they're elevating resources to it.
Okay.
But I have to get to that spot now too.
And this is for the sports, like the rec teams, and if you can't afford it, this is covering
Like,
your costs. So that
yes.
you're increasing access to folks.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's great to see. So those are the ones that really stood out to me as I reviewed this.
So you're just saying that that is the language it's coming forward as it is. Maintain Helping Hand Scholarship and continue to enroll in programs. And I know from a budgetary perspective, they would like to put more resources towards that because it was very successful and they got more participation when you remove a barrier like that. And that came out of a lot of conversations that was a barrier.
I had a question. What do you think about the safety? When I read that one, particularly the one with the neighborhoods, I wonder if that is actually something that the community will feel, or we should be a little more understanding of. Because I think that is in Battle Creek, there is always this kind of like bad reputation about the safety of the city and the fact that they are obviously plans to provide more safety, more light in the, I mean, there are several items there. And the reason why I was reading through is because I think that the last meeting, the chief was saying that a lot of the violence come from domestic violence. And because of that, it was hard for them obviously to follow through and to figure out where are the violence in that time. But I didn't see anything related to mental health or anything related to like a domestic violence or safety for women or men. I didn't know if that actually applies there. That's why I was more curious to know about it.
Would you like me to respond?
Please, yes.
That's an excellent point. I'm sorry, Chief he's triple booked, so he had to jump off for another one and he apologizes. He sent me, he's having technical issues too. Safety is always a big one when we go into our staff retreat and then ultimately when we talk to the commission, because safety means different things to different people. It could be the condition in which your neighborhood is in and that you don't feel safe. It could be from a domestic violence lens. I think sometimes what we forget to share, we don't share all the good stuff, but the police department does a lot with domestic violence. There's a victim advocate in the police department that actually responds with the officers when we know that we're probably dealing with a domestic violence issue. I'm sad to report that if you've looked at our last 2 homicides were both domestic violence related. And that's always heartbreaking to not only the police department, but Safe Place, our domestic violence shelter, Summit Point, who assists many of those in abusive relationships with mental health coaching and help. Those are just awful. But a lot of times we just assume the community knows that's part of our function. The COPS officer program was actually created to help address safety. These are specific officers that are planted in neighborhoods, that they're like the one-stop shop. If you need something from the police department, you start with your COPS officer. They can connect you with the domestic violence shelter, with Summit Point, a victim advocate. And then you may not know, many of our police officers are trained as crisis intervention team members. So now we have a master, I wish the chief was here because he says this so well. When he says it, it sounds better than when I say it. But we have a master clinician now as a position in the police department. So that person can actually respond to calls that have nothing to do with law enforcement, but have everything to do with mental health. And she is trained to be able to respond to those types of calls. Police officers are trained to respond to law enforcement things. And we just had this fire station conversation. 60% of our fire station calls are medical, not fire. In the police department, over 50% of their calls have to do with mental health, nothing to do with law enforcement. It might escalate to a law enforcement matter, but now, I mean, I know it seems like a lot for one position, but it's a start. Now they can both respond, because sometimes those situations elevate to a law enforcement matter if you're not able to de-escalate the situation. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, you'll find the COPS office programs smattered in and out of that. And oftentimes everybody focuses on police and fire for safety, and we have 2 great departments working in that area, but we also include community services because homes and the condition of homes can become dangerous and create unhealthy living environments. Commissioner Ballard and I have had many conversations and frustrations as if we have a property that is so far gone from a junk accumulation, and now there are vermin and bugs and they're impacting neighbors either to the sides or to the back. What are we doing? That's not healthy or safe, you know. So we recognize that the work that we do, even though I understand it's difficult when we have to come at something from an enforcement perspective, but we believe that it's necessary, and we have the support of the commission to help keep our neighborhoods as safe as we can. That's why we are really aggressive with blight, so that we don't see properties continue to deteriorate if we can help it.
Yeah, so this has me wondering, how does the city assesses the wrong word, but I'm gonna use it, how well people know about the cops in their neighborhood, that program and that person?
So, interesting, we're trying again, the chief says this way better than I do, but, and I have to remember the name of the system and I'll think about it. But after every interaction that our officers have, we have a new piece of technology that automatically provides the person that's involved a text or an email or whatever to say, how was your experience with the Battle Creek Police Department today in this incident? So we're doing it on basically a call by call. That it's spider technology. I couldn't, I was going to say something else, but that would not have been. I knew it was some sort of creature that I don't really care for, but it's spelled differently. So that's one way. We also get feedback directly from the NPCs because COPS officers go and they speak at the NPCs. They also speak at civic organizations. They'll come in as presenters at Rotary, Lions, Optimist.
So there's a plan for outreach for that, so people
Yes.
know that it exists.
Very
Okay.
big in our NPC 5, because we have like 25 members and we have probably a minimum of 20 people there every time.
Nice.
And it's nice to have the COPS officer there because the 25 people that belong to NPC are the people that have the eyes out in the community.
Yeah.
And are able to move forward.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you.
but Yeah, go on, Kiona.
I'm sorry, I recall the chief speaking to that in one of our past meetings, and I know there was an outstanding question on how often is that information updated? How do they go about collecting that information? Like, I know some folks live off of government provided phones or may not have access to their email. So I know we had touched on that, and I believe Chief had taken that as something to follow back up with us on. But now that Rebecca is lifting that back up, I still believe that that was outstanding from that meeting. And I want to say we touched on that towards like the end of last year, but I do recall us having a conversation about that and him expanding on those services.
Thanks, Kiona. And if I remember correctly, we also were talking about, are those reports things that are public? So like, is there a summarized report of those spider calls that lets us know as a community, like 80% of the people that we're serving say that their needs were met, or that, right? Like, and I don't know how it reports what, but, so thank you for reminding me, Kiona, because I don't think we ever followed up on that. So that might be.
And I can't answer that, but I certainly will lift that back up to the chief.
Thank you.
Yep.
I do know that they are working on a public facing dashboard.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. Thank you.
I hope I'm not speaking out of turn.
And if we could stop sharing this for a minute so we can see everybody that's online in case they wanted to talk, so it's hard to see. Anybody who's joining us by Zoom have anything from the 2-year plan that they wanted to lift up?
No, everything I wanted to lift has been touched on. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiana.
Same here.
Thanks, Derek. Okay. Well, this is going to be an ongoing conversation for us because we do think that it provides us a little more of the guardrails that I think we needed to understand, like, how do we know what the city's doing to know what to try and advise on? In our last meeting, it felt like there was a little bit of trying to reset. And as I was talking to Kimberly and Rebecca and Kiona, it was both Kiona and I, it was like, the reason this feels awkward right now is because we were so busy for so long with that CRB work. I mean, it was intense. And then to go from that to this felt like there was, this gap in what it is we were doing.
One request, when it's
Yeah.
approved by the commission, can we have it in the form without 2223?
Yes, this was.
Well, that will make it.
I would have a lot more input if
Well, and that's gonna be in the next couple months, so.
Yeah, so just the final version would be great.
It might be 50 pages, but at least we can read it.
If it's strategic planning.
Once it's approved, we can do that. And if we can also print it on 11x17 paper, if
Yeah,
that would be
that's what we
helpful. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think the color doesn't help with my eyes either.
It does really good in the black and white.
Yeah.
Okay.
The blue was like, oh my God.
I'm sure there's an educational piece in there, so. So we'll keep working on that.
Which really gets, yeah, go on.
And apologies for joining late. My previous meeting had ran over. Did we already touch on the outcome of yesterday's commission's meeting? Any level takeaways from that?
Nope, we're moving to that next.
Oh, okay,
Thank you,
perfect.
Deanna. Yes, so Kimberly, would you like to fill us in on the CRB update and what happened with the commission meeting yesterday, or is that gonna be you, Rebecca?
Nope. What? You
Sure, I would invite Commissioner Ballard and
Yes, please.
Rebecca to join in. The introduction to the ordinance amendment was presented last night, and it was unanimously approved. So just as I indicated in my email to this group, that is due in large part to the diligence and insight and time of this body. And so it's really again, a celebration of all of the efforts that you all have put into this to get it to this point, to help it be considered by the city commission. There were some public comments. They were all positive in support of the Community Oversight Board. And there were a couple of questions from commissioners just wanting to clarify a couple of aspects of the wording in the ordinance amendment. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add, and Chuck was there too.
Thank you for being a judge.
I think there was some clarification on membership numbers. I mean, ordinance language, sometimes it reads like stereo instructions. Now that dates me. If you've never read stereo instructions, you have no idea what that means, but oh my gosh.
Not IKEA furniture. So it's a little less complicated.
Okay, IKEA furniture. Just clarifying, because, the feedback we got was to have specific seats for those that serve marginalized communities and specific seats for 3 organizations, VOCIS, the NAACP, and the Burma Center. But it was unclear that those 3 are part of the 4 that serve marginalized communities. It isn't 4 members that serve marginalized communities and the 3 seats. The 3 seats would be part of the 4. So basically what you have is you have 4 seats for those serving marginalized, which will include those 3 entities. Then you have the rest are, did I say that right?
I would say a minimum of 4.
Minimum of 4.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then resident representation, and then the 2 staff people, because now the proposal was 9 members. So you got 4 at least 4 representing those serving marginalized communities. Then you have 3, then you have, so that's 7. And then to get to 9, it was 2, the DEI officer and the human resources director, but they are ex officio non-voting members. So you have basically the 7 voting members and then the alternates, 2 alternates that must attend the meetings, because there is just going to be a tremendous amount of a learning curve and training required. So our next step is to move forward with the ordinance adoption proposal to the commission at the first meeting in May. And then when that happens, then bylaws need to be created and we have to put this plan in. How do we recruit for members and all of that? Did I say that right?
Yeah, so ideally, the first task of the sitting COB would be for them to develop their bylaws and present that back to the
Thank you.
commission
Yep.
for approval.
Had it backwards.
But certainly there's a lot that will happen after, even before May 7th. So I have been preparing a scope of work for the training. So that will go out in RFP for consultants that have expertise in civilian oversight boards. And then there's the process of the community awareness piece. So in addition to the city's traditional methods and tools for that, I've had conversations with VOCIS and Burma Center and NAACP about partnerships to engage the community to build awareness and education about the COB. What is the complaint process? What does this add now that you have an opportunity to ask for a review if you're not satisfied with the determination of your complaint? Education about what it entails to serve on the Community Oversight Board. So there's a lot of information to share, and working with our communications team of developing those materials and putting that education plan in place. I have an open invitation from at least one service organization. I think that still stands. You invited me to come speak at some point.
I was thinking you're inviting me to. Okay, yeah.
And so we'll
Yes,
be
you do.
looking to get in front of other community groups, would certainly lean on the Human Relations Board to help with this community awareness and education piece, and spreading the word so that we can get a large pool of applicants that are interested
The
in.
initial outreach is around nominating and finding folks for the board. Okay, good.
Yeah.
That would have been my question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then when will that nominating and the application process begin? Several months down the road at this point? Or-
So the way that the timeline currently is set up is that this goes forward on May 7th, then it starts May 7th. And for that month is when we'll be really hitting hard, promoting this getting out into the community, accepting applications. And then the applications would come to the review committee in mid-June. And then those recommendations would go to the city commission following that review committee.
And then-
So we would be looking to have them seated and going through training in July and or August, depending on their schedules.
And then where will those applications be? Will they be online? Will they be on the city's website? Will they be?
They'll be on the city's website.
Okay. I just have somebody I'm thinking and I want to direct them.
Also looking to have hard copies available at the different places where I'll be going to talk.
Okay.
Just looking at a variety of ways to provide that information. It was really helpful for me when I attended the NACO conference last year. Just talking about making sure you understand that people are at all different literacy levels and receive information in all different ways. So what are the various ways that we can provide this information? Should we create some videos? So I've talked with Jessica, our communications director, about that, and
Including multiple languages.
multiple
So that would be
languages,
translated.
et cetera. So just really wanting to
Yeah.
promote this as well as possible so that the community knows that this is not only an opportunity to serve, but a great opportunity for community input into our processes with law
And I
enforcement.
know,
Well,
I know we're at 5:01. I do believe we might lose our city staff. At
Thank you,
this.
Kiona.
Hi.
Oh, thank
Hi.
you. I thought we went till
I just wanted to make sure we had public comment.
Oh, let's do that and then we can continue our conversation informally. Okay, thank you. Any public comment? Is anybody online? We have nobody in the room, so seeing none. Eric?
I have a public comment.
Oh, yes, Whitney?
I know that, I believe it was brought up in yesterday's city commission meeting. I had to leave early. But there was, some concerns that were also brought to my attention, in regards to a, housing community. And I was asked to have that also brought up at this meeting, in regards to some issues that have taken place at the Village at Irving Park Apartments and a recent fire. And one of the residents has asked that we get involved in having some conversations with their management staff to address resident concerns in regards to health and safety.
Road issues.
Thank you very much, Whitney. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Rebecca's taking note of that.
We actually talked with that resident last night, Whitney, after the meeting, fire chief, code inspection, myself, a couple commissioners. So we are in contact with Ms. Fox.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to your board on HRB.
Thank you, city staff. Sorry.
Thank you.
Make sure I get my initials all right here.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Is there going to be term limits on those? I know last night it came up, and I got a note that a lot of the committees don't seem to have term limits, which was fairly surprising to me. But myself and Commissioner Morse, in particular, were concerned with, I think, the Historical Society not having term limits. And I just think that it's imperative that this open of a committee, and very prominent, in my opinion, committee, that the citizens want to be able to have input. They definitely would want to see term limits, and not just what I'm hearing from the audience there was that a lot of times things are just who, depending on who's mayor or who's running something, may appoint people in, and I don't want that perception to ever be on this particular committee that's coming up.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, there are term limits. The first are staggered, so
Good.
in random.
good.
So to get my numbers right, the 7 voting members, 4 would be 3-year, 3 would be 2-year, Same thing with the 2 alternates. And then following that first term, then from there forward, there would be 3-year terms. And members are eligible to serve 2 3-year terms. They can take 1 year off and serve another 3 years, not to exceed 9 years during their lifetime.
Okay.
And then the officer terms are 2-year terms. I believe not to exceed 6 years.
Thank you so much.
And as a point of clarification, our agendas do read 5:30. So I know we've lost Alicia, but we do have the time for those of you who can stay. So this has been a really helpful conversation, I think, and thank you to city staff for being as informative as you have been around these things. Any other questions around the Community Oversight Board specifically?
Would that be considered an advisory board or an action board?
Question.
The COB.
Yeah.
Advisory. Advisory, a little bit different though, because if the committee decides, if the committee doesn't support the chief's decision, it then comes to the city manager, not to the city commission. Whereas most of our boards and commissions report and advise the city commission.
Could you clarify what that means? Like in terms of a result?
So then the city manager would receive the information from the COB and have to make a determination whether the decision goes and reverses the chief's decision or supports the chief's decision.
And so the city manager then has that power to
Yes.
reverse the chief's decision on whatever matter might have come up.
Yes.
And that's written into the ordinance that's going in on May 7th.
Yep.
Okay, is that typical with other communities that you saw when you went to NACO and,
Yes.
you know, okay,
There are so many variations of
yeah.
civilian oversight boards. Ours is review focused. There are independent. I mean, you all know this, you
Yeah.
research all of it.
Yeah.
There are hybrids.
Yeah.
What was stressed to me by a couple of people who have, were in this in the early, have been doing this for years in terms of either, leading a civilian oversight board or providing training, et cetera, is that it's very important to create the oversight board for your community, to not necessarily do a cookie cutter approach or try to duplicate exactly what another community has created, because you may not meet the needs of your specific community.
Yeah. Thank you. I think is why we took so much time with it.
Is there anything built in the instance where it's a conflict of interest for the city manager to involve him or herself? So that's number one. Or if the person whom originated this request is not happy with the feedback or the outcome, the results of the city manager's review and would like to escalate it up, or is the city manager like the end of the road? Yes, it stops.
So I can take the latter. This process does not preclude the complainant from following any other means pursuant to their complaint. This is just an option that they can pursue. If they're not happy with this outcome, they can pursue another.
Legal or whatever.
Yes. Conflict of interest for the city manager. Is that what the first?
That was the first question?
Yes, that's the first one. Yes.
I'm trying to think of what that would look like. Do you have an example?
Let's say, for example, it's one of your like the city manager, I'll use that term, family member that's involved, or it could be honestly against the city manager, like it's being raised. So anything that touches on a personal nature where they would want that city manager removed, if that makes sense.
So I would have to recuse myself and then we would have to determine then who steps into that place.
And so
Just so
that's
you
what my
know, the city
question.
manager would recluse themselves and they would have to put somebody else in. I don't know who or what that would be. And I'm trying to think.
Would it go down to the assistant
That's
city
what I was
manager?
I don't think the language.
Right, because so for like right now, if things that goes before the city commission, when one commissioner recuse themselves, it leaves the other commissioners. But when all balls flow up to one city manager, which is one person, I just didn't know what language was built in as a backup, because I could see.
It probably is the assistant city manager, because if you look at other flows of information or chains of command, like, this is it. Poor Mallory, she hates it when I use this analogy, but like if I'm hit by a bus
Sure.
tomorrow or tonight, Ted automatically assumes my role. And it would happen also if I had a conflict of interest. Like, let's say it's my husband who's driving a bus who hits me.
Yeah. It's a good.
We can unpack that a whole. lot of different ways. But yeah.
He doesn't
can't
drive a
get-
bus,
you
so I'm
can't,
just using it as an example that then
Yeah.
it would still be Ted.
You can't
The
get hit
assistant city
after
manager.
2:45.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, I think, Fiona, thank you
Good,
for bringing
by
it up though.
piece of
because that's
Gildan.
something I think we need to think through
That's not
all
your fault.
scenarios.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
very helpful
Have an answer. Yeah.
and have an answer, right?
We may be relying on existing language, but that
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily make it clear. And so we'd have to talk to the city attorney about the language, because
Yeah.
it was she drafted the ordinance language because we used an already existing city ordinance so that we didn't start from scratch. So I'll double check. We can
Okay.
double check that with Jill.
That's a good
Thank you for bringing that up, Kiana. We
Yes.
will get that confirmed. And I do anticipate including an FAQ sheet with the marketing materials for this board. So that frequently asked questions, sorry. That may be another place where that can be addressed when we confirm the protocol.
Is it possible for that information to be communicated with us before our next meeting if it's available? Okay. Did somebody else unmute? Was somebody in here saying something? Thought I heard somebody. No?
I just had a question about, so if it's been unanimously approved, then who is responsible for the, let's call it community marketing of what is about to, of unpacking it now that it's an entity? Yeah, thank you. So,
The DEI
DEI
office
officer,
in partnership with the communications team.
good luck.
And all of you.
I know, I was gonna say, if you need any
Share
support,
and, yeah,
yeah.
I will provide materials that would be easy for you to share.
Yes.
Whether on your social media networks or email groups, etc.
Just have a clarification question, because I think somebody brought it up. Are we going to an every other month meeting?
That's the next agenda item. Thank you.
Nice
Commissioner.
segue, Commissioner.
Given what we have done and, reviewing the last couple years, what we've done, I'm recommending that we go to quarterly meetings unless there is something necessary. We always have the ability to pull ourselves together, but at this point, it gives us the time to really build up to what it is we need to do. I can work as chair with city staff to see if there are things that are coming up that they need us for. We always have the ability to form work groups if we need to. That's what, a lot of us did on the work of the COB research, was to be able to do it outside of this space. It gives us a little bit more flexibility and a little less demand on your time, because I know all of us, we have very demanding lives. It's really hard for us to get away, even if it's for 90 minutes a month. I know that's not everybody's case, but for many of us it is. And so we want to make sure that everybody stays charged and ready and not spent and exhausted.
Right.
Right? Because we also have a lot of folks whose terms, you'll be getting emails, your terms are coming up, and I'd love people to stay on if they feel like they can. I also think that if we're recruiting for something that says this is a quarterly meeting and as needed, we might open ourselves up to other folks who'd be interested that otherwise won't make a commitment for once a month. So we don't need a vote on that. That's just what I'm suggesting right now we're going to do. I'll work with the staff to figure out what that cadence is. Because right now it's April and we're meeting, so this would be, I would say, first quarter, right? Although it's
No, second quarter.
So with then it's.
July would be.
Thank you. July would be the next meeting. So we'll look at, yeah, it feels like really far away.
My tenure ends in June. Because I was a 2-year tenure.
July 21st. I just looked at yours.
Nothing.
Yes.
I'm sorry, you have to stay till
No, I
July.
know.
Please tell me the meeting will be before that. Yes, so stay tuned on that, but we do, I have been working with the nominating process around being somewhat selective, because I don't feel that, again, this board is completely representative of the community yet. And so I really want to think about how each of us can reach out and find folks to serve that we think will help us have a more, I don't know, a more equitable view of what goes on in this community that we may not carry or may not experience, right? So let's be thinking about that as we move forward. So we will be communicating the next meeting date. We will be in touch by email with any of these updates from the May 7th meeting. So if there's anything that we want to know, always feel free to reach out. I'm really appreciative of everybody's, again, the passion and commitment that the folks who show up to these meetings has displayed has been what keeps me going. Because Rebecca can attest to the times I've said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
And I say, I'm sorry, you can't.
I support that. Totally support, staying forever. I do have two questions about the
Yes.
quarterly meeting, we're already at 5:15, myself and Kiona, because our lives are what they are, and we didn't get here at 4 o'clock. Will the meetings go longer based on that? Because we'll be covering more content less often.
Yep.
And there was two questions. That was one of them.
Was it about start time or was it just about duration?
It was duration and oh no, totally lost it.
We already decided on 90 minutes.
Okay.
And I think that we stick with that for the next meeting. If we decide 90 minutes isn't sufficient for us and we need to revisit it again, let's do that at the time. But if we're efficient and we can get through some of these things, I think 90 minutes should be able to.
Bless you.
Bless you.
I totally cannot think of the other piece of that.
It'll come to you.
At 10 o'clock
Tonight.
tonight. Are there any other board comments? Anything you're hearing out there that you want to share?
How many positions on the board, sorry,
Yes.
are
That was my
currently open?
That was my question, so thank you.
Well, come on, it's gonna be a lot more.
Yes, is there a cap on members or a minimum?
15 is the cap.
Okay.
15.
Yep.
And we have one vacancy.
Currently, yeah.
And my question is, if we want to be more reflective of the community, who should we be trying to recruit?
Well, we have nobody from the Burmese community.
See, I know a person that might fill that, so I'll
Okay.
talk to him.
So that's one specifically that I know that has been top of my mind.
Yeah.
Right, so if there's a way to identify somebody, for those of you who've been around a while, we did have someone for a minute, Kim. Her last name is escaping me. She works with the ISD. She's a family coach there. And it just, this time conflicted with school getting out. She has 3 young children and she just couldn't make it work. And so she had to step back pretty quickly. But if you know of someone, and I'm happy to meet him for coffee and talk, just let me know.
Or
before
he
they
may
have to
know,
commit,
he may
or
know someone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, please let us know.
The disabled community is another community I
Yeah.
think of often.
Yeah. And at the beginning, we had a couple of disabled community members and it was again
Mhm.
difficult. When we were entirely virtual, it was different. We still provided this option in case they did, but one sadly passed away.
Mhm.
And that, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Josita, did you have anything you were gonna share? Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
We're all three.
Same
Manifesting
time,
and like-
yeah.
We have
Treating
five,
energy here.
five positions that will, the term expires in 2024, July 1, 2024. That's our fiscal year. So depending on whether or not people wish to stay or, we may have more
Yeah.
vacancies at that time.
The other thing we have to, and I think Kiona, you and I can do this, is we've got to look at the folks that are on that roster who just don't show up. And we'll have to make a decision about holding those positions for them when they're not here. So while we may only have one vacancy, we have a few folks that we just
may have
don't
4
see.
or 5.
Yeah,
Is there any language?
There is.
Around this, if you miss
Yeah.
somebody, we're
Yes.
going to assume that.
attendances, yes.
Yep.
It's not assume, I have to make a recommendation that they're removed. And we
Okay.
haven't gone through that
I
process
understand
yet.
because one of the boards I sit on, in their language, it says if you miss 3 in a row, it is assumed that you have left.
Unless you've communicated
Yep,
somehow.
left the board
Yeah.
unless other arrangements have been made. So it's an assumption that's
Yeah.
done, and then the burden isn't on the board to do that, and it doesn't become an issue for comfortability and.
Yeah,
So what happens is
anyway.
if we've realized that somebody has hit the criteria, it's
Sure.
actually the city commission that has to remove them.
yes.
Gotcha.
If they're,
okay.
if they still are in an active term.
Sure.
Because they approved them.
Yes.
Yes. Yep. And then we have to
Makes
say
sense.
for the reasons of failure to appear, missing.
Short-term
full-
resigning.
Yep.
Yeah, is that prompt have to come from the chair?
Mhm. Well, either that
Right.
or you working with our team saying, hey, did you know so-and-so has missed the 4 meetings in a row? That then automatically
Okay.
make them eligible to, to request to be removed. As Commissioner Ballard said, many times when you report that, they resign.
Yeah.
And not, we're not
Sure.
trying to embarrass anybody. That just
Right.
happens to be
Yeah.
the process that's set out in,
Right.
I think in the city's ordinance.
So I'll prioritize that before our next meeting, just taking a look at the roster and looking at the attendance and just maybe making some reach outs to make sure there isn't some extenuating circumstance. But
Right.
there are some folks that we just haven't seen.
Sure.
And so we'll want to make sure that that's possible. And for some people, they have a desire, they just don't have the time.
Yeah.
And it's, it's like, in what other ways can we engage them so that we can free up that space for folks who can be here.
I just want to say on behalf of the city commission that we appreciate all the time and effort that this board has put in, particularly the last 3 years and some people for 15 years. But it doesn't go unnoticed.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Very much appreciate it. Okay, so our next meeting will be in July. We will send a notification. I really, again, full appreciation. I'm going to adjourn us here in a second.
I'm really sad
Um,
about that, actually. I love this meeting.